Week 2 of the preseason is already done, and we are already seeing glimpses of what we might expect from teams and players for the 2021 NFL season and for fantasy football. I didn't want to do a video last week just because it was week 1. The starters rarely play, if they even do at all, and I really didn't think that we could glean much usable information off of week 1, and that's why I wanted to wait for week 2, because we have seen a lot more from the starters and from teams and what they're trying to do for the 2021 season. So let's get right into the video. The first player that I really want to talk about is Baltimore Ravens running back J.K. Dobbins, a highly hyped up sophomore running back coming into his second season in a fantastic offense with Lamar Jackson, a player that a lot of people seem to be really high on. And then there are the other people, myself included, that don't necessarily see the breakout for J.K. Dobbins, at least not yet initially. I'm a huge J.K. Dobbins fan. I loved him coming out of college, but the breakout I think is going to have to wait another year just because of the pass catching isn't necessarily there. Gus Edwards is still there. And based on what we have been seeing from both training camp and from preseason games, J.K. Dobbins is actually kind of struggling. He's not having a really good preseason. In week 1, he had 3 carries for 0 yards against New Orleans. In week 2, he had 4 carries for 8 yards against the Carolina Panthers. And the biggest problem, as expected, and like I already said, is Gus Edwards. He didn't play against New Orleans due to a family matter, but he did play in week 2, also had 4 carries, but instead of having 8 yards like J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards turned those 4 carries into 28 total yards. He also outsnapped Dobbins 10 snaps to 8 in the first quarter of the week 2 game against the Carolina Panthers, and it's basically the same as what we saw last year, where when Dobbins really started to get going and started getting double-digit carries in week 8 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he went on to average 12 carries and 1 target per game on a 50 to 60% snap share per game to end out the second half of the 2020 season. Edwards then also in that same time frame also averaged 10 carries per game and 1 target per game on about 40 to 50% of the snaps. So you can see as Mark Ingram was getting phased out of the Baltimore Ravens plan and he's no longer there anymore, this team really turned into a 50-50 split between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. And even with J.K. Dobbins leading a little bit of that, if he is, then that's still not going to be enough, in my opinion, to really have a breakout season for J.K. Dobbins. This is going to be a two-headed backfield. The Ravens running back coach even said so as much, saying, right now I see it as a 1AA. We have different types of knives and we're going to use them. If a guy can catch or run a route, if a guy can protect, if a guy can run downhill or outside zone, all those different things, let's just use that and not only be balanced the way Greg Roman is talking about on offense, but let's be balanced in our room. Be careful investing in J.K. Dobbins heavily because he could end up disappointing you as an RB2, whereas on the flip side, I think Gus Edwards presents a massive value right now going 6 rounds later than J.K. Dobbins in the 9th round of your redraft leagues. He could present massive value at that range right now and could return upwards of near RB3 or flex type of value, and you're getting him in the 9th round versus J.K. Dobbins, who might be a little bit better but could be very similarly played and scoring for fantasy football, but you're paying that 3rd round ADP price, and that's something that I'm not really all that into for J.K. Dobbins at this moment. The next player I want to highlight is Corey Davis, and I actually took down Corey Davis's jersey right above me right here in favor of DeAndre Swift. I probably shouldn't have done that for this video, but Corey Davis is looking fantastic. He's looking very well established as the New York Jets wide receiver 1 and is actually becoming a favorite of rookie Zach Wilson already. In 2 quarters of preseason play, Davis has totaled 12 routes run, 10 targets, 6 receptions, and 88 yards. And like I said, only 2 quarters of play so far in the preseason. His ADP is 100% going to rise, and his current 11th round slot I would expect to be in the 8th or 9th round at the very highest, in my opinion, upwards in that Cortland Sutton, Juju Smith-Schuster kind of area of wide receivers, which I think still makes him a good value. But he is a great wide receiver to target later in your drafts, especially if you kind of went 0 wide receiver. You know, you prioritized your running backs first. Maybe you grabbed an early tight end, an early quarterback, or both of those positions as well. And you're now looking for some wide receivers to fill out your flex or wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 spots. And Corey Davis could absolutely do that for you as a volume type of receiver, as the Jets wide receiver 1. Third on this list that I want to talk about is my boy Myles Gaskin. I need to talk to you guys about Myles Gaskin because people really fell for that 3-headed committee running back coach speak talk from just a week ago with the Malcolm Brown situation with Salvon Ahmed playing and all that stuff. But it's just, I don't understand it, man. Malcolm Brown is so irrelevant to this team, and he's not going to be a problem for Myles Gaskin down the road. I mean, we already saw it after rushing 8 yards on 9 carries in week 1. Brown played only 5 of the 37 starter snaps with Tua Tagovailoa in week 2 and had 2 carries in that time span. Gaskin, however, saw a majority of snaps with 19 and then turned that into 10 touches for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns, including what I really like to see, a goal line rushing touchdown. But Gaskin also showed just how valuable he is as a pass catcher. That's one of the great things that I love about Myles Gaskin, and where a lot of his fantasy value is going to come from is in that pass catching ability. And he caught all 4 of his targets in his time span with Tua Tagovailoa for 44 yards and a receiving touchdown as well. While I do believe that Malcolm Brown is like completely irrelevant, Myles Gaskin already shed away a Malcolm Brown type in Jordan Howard last year at the beginning of the year. He's already doing it again with Malcolm Brown. I do think that Salvon Ahmed can be a thorn in his side. In week 2, he played 13 snaps and saw 4 touches to Gaskin's 10. But as long as Gaskin, in my opinion, is leading this backfield, even with Salvon Ahmed there, getting a little bit of the work, as long as Gaskin is getting the majority of that and the receiving volume, most importantly, is there, he will return value, in my opinion, as a borderline top 25 running back at his ADP, with upside as well if he gets more work and steals more work away from Salvon Ahmed. Another side note with Myles Gaskin here is that Tua as well is also looking very good in this preseason. He's had very nice throws to Mike Gesicki in both games. He looks like he just has a better overall presence in that huddle, in the pocket, all that stuff, a better whole command and understanding of this offense. And again, an offensive system that they have now built around Tua Tagovailoa versus last year's old offensive system that was built around more for Ryan Fitzpatrick. This is a new offense. Tua is another year removed from that hip injury, and I'm very excited for the prospects of what Tua can actually do, because in my opinion, he is still a good quarterback with some upgraded weapons, a good defense. This is going to be a pretty good Miami Dolphins team in my opinion, and I think Tua is actually going to have a pretty solid fantasy football season for your teams as well. The 4th player on this list I have is, again, my boy Jakobi Meyers. And boy, I hope you guys have been paying attention to not only this YouTube channel where I pumped up Meyers a couple times, but also the actual DLF website as well, including an article from Cooper Adams, who put out a fantastic bit on why you should be targeting Jakobi Meyers as a late round flyer in your dynasty startups. And we're already seeing a lot of that come true in the preseason already. Meyers played on 15 of Cam Newton's 17 snaps across from Nelson Agholor, both of them being the solidified, clear-cut starters at the wide receiver position, in my opinion. In that time, Jakobi Meyers saw 3 targets, caught all 3 for 56 yards and a touchdown. And while the expectation is that the New England Patriots actually play a lot of 12 personnel because of the signing of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry to get both of those tight ends out there as well, that would still leave room for 2 wide receivers. And in my opinion, that is right now Nelson Agholor and Jakobi Meyers. So Meyers is not really going to be leaving the field. He is and has a fantastic opportunity to lead this team in targets, receptions, yards, and if he scores some touchdowns, he could be very fantastic for your rosters in both Dynasty and Redraft, especially at his late round price. And then finally, this 5th one is just kind of an amalgam of a bunch of really quick observations that I've noticed from the preseason, just to kind of sum up a lot of different smaller topics into one bigger one. The first one, Najee Harris, absolute baller. I mean, this dude played on all but 1 snap with the Pittsburgh Steelers starters and had 4 carries and 3 targets. That volume is going to be there. Trust that volume. Najee Harris is going to be an RB1 top 12 running back in 2021. Number 2, J.D. McKissic is the 3rd down back on this Washington football team. We've already seen that when J.D. McKissic is out there, the majority of the time it is on 3rd down. So if Gibson's going to be relegated to a 1st and 2nd down role, that's still going to be fine. I think that's still going to be good to return borderline RB1 numbers for Antonio Gibson, which is his current ADP and price right now. But that's not going to give you that ultimate high upside ceiling of like a potential top 5 season at the running back position. Third thing real quick, you're going to have to wait on Michael Carter. He didn't have any snaps with the starters with the New York Jets. It was basically split between Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson. So that's, not great news for Michael Carter, but I do expect him to eventually work his way into the mix and potentially even lead the backfield, because I do think that he is the best running back on that New York Jets team, and they drafted him in the 4th round, which isn't fantastic draft capital, but it's still good enough in my opinion to let them see what they have in Michael Carter for the 2021 season. Another thing here is please stop drafting David Johnson. Please don't draft David Johnson at all in your fantasy leagues. Honestly, I'm not even touching any of these Houston Texans running backs because this is a complete three-headed monster right here. And it's truly a monster because none of them are going to be good for fantasy football. Out of 13 starter snaps that the Houston Texans had in week 2, their snap shares went Ingram 6, Lindsey 4, and Johnson 3. So I don't want any of these guys, and I don't really think much more needs to be said on this Houston Texans backfield. Next up, I think that a Dallas Goedert breakout is not going to happen this year, or at least not going to happen as long as Zach Ertz is still on the team. Zach Ertz is taking volume away from Dallas Goedert, and as much as we can sit here and scream at the television and say stop throwing it to Zach Ertz, throw it instead to Dallas Goedert. That's not what the Philadelphia Eagles are going to do. That's not what Jalen Hurts is going to do, and that will affect us for fantasy football. So if you're in your drafts and you get to that Dallas Goedert range and you still need a tight end, stop. Don't draft a tight end and wait and punt a little bit more because you can get guys later that do exactly the same thing like Tyler Higbee or Irv Smith, Robert Tonyan, Evan Ingram. These guys will do the exact same thing that Dallas Goedert will do, just at 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds of ADP of difference. The next one is Saints wide receiver Marquez Callaway. Seems like he definitely has a stranglehold on the Saints wide receiver 1 position with Michael Thomas out. I mean, just last night in the Saints game against the Jaguars, he had 5 catches for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns with Jameis Winston. But in week 1, he also had 3 receptions for 61 yards on 4 targets with Taysom Hill. So he's had success with both quarterbacks. So no matter who that quarterback is, it seems like Marquez Callaway has the favor of both of those guys as the wide receiver 1 without Michael Thomas. One other dynasty note I want to make about the New Orleans Saints is to see if Juwan Johnson is available for you in your dynasty leagues. He probably is, even in deeper leagues as well, because he is getting a lot of hype as potentially being a new tight end convert from the wide receiver position to now play the New Orleans Saints tight end. And with Adam Troutman getting injured as well, Juwan Johnson actually having 2 catches for 71 yards in week 1 and then having another catch this past week, it is possible that he could be another playmaker on this New Orleans Saints offense that's devoid of a lot of other playmakers outside of Alvin Kamara, now Marquez Callaway, and it could be potentially Juwan Johnson, who slots in and has some pretty solid games for you if you need a bye week or an injury fill-in, just as a quick free tight end that you can get off of the waiver wire. So check to see if Juwan Johnson is available in your dynasty leagues. And this last one here is directly for Matt Nagy. So if you're not Matt Nagy, you can just turn the video off because I'm already done. But Matt Nagy, because I know you watch this show, what are you doing? What more do you need to see from Justin Fields to know that he should be your starter, that he is light years ahead of Andy Dalton? What are you doing? What are you waiting for to put Justin Fields in as the starter and at least give him some starter reps with Darnell Mooney, with Allen Robinson, with David Montgomery? What more do you need to see? Because he's cooking everybody out there. Now, maybe you're just planning to sacrifice, Andy Dalton as the sacrificial lamb at quarterback to the LA Rams in week 1, sacrifice him to Aaron Donald's like 10 sacks. That's totally fine. Maybe that's actually what you're going to end up doing. And then you play Justin Fields in week 2. But can we just stop with the whole well, I don't really know. This is still Andy Dalton's team. He's still the quarterback. He's still our starter. Justin Fields is going to have to work for it. No, stop it. I think the same thing can be said to Kyle Shanahan, but I think Kyle is smarter and I trust him to make the right decision with playing Trey Lance over Jimmy Garoppolo. So Matt Nagy, come on, man. If you want to watch a video of me breaking down my best value quarterback at the position for both redraft and dynasty just for 2021, you can click right up here and find that video. And with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch y'all later.